Hey everyone. I'm going to start today by looking at curves and how you can trim and extend curves. So if I start by left clicking on polyline, and let's double click on the top view and just left click, right click to make a curve there. Left click, right click, and just make some sort of overlapping curves. And for this last one, let's make it shorter than to meet the next curves. And if you type from the top trim, it's going to ask you for the cutting object first. So select the cutting object and right click to accept it. And then select the object to trim, 1 and 2, and it trims, and then right click to finish. And again, just a lot of practice with this left click and right click, and then the sort of dance of left and right will sort of make you better at this software. That it's just something to get used to. So I can do the same thing again, right click to reset the command, select the cutting object and choose this as the cutter. And then the object to trim, there, right, done. Reset command with right click, select cutting object, select object to trim, there, done. Okay, now on this one, I can do extend, slightly different. And it says select the boundary object. So right click to accept the boundary object, select the curve to extend, and then this will extend to that. Right click to close the command, and then trim again. So select cutting object, this one, accept, select object, trim. There. And that's a way that you can use extend and trim to do that. Now, of course, if we go into 3D, that's all because that was drawn flat on a two-dimensional plane. If this curve was slightly higher like this, so that's now not planar, and I went into this view, like even if I took this and I moved it here, that now trimming and extending would be not sort of three-dimensional, and Rhino is very three-dimensional. So if I bring that over there, unless they have changed this in the newer version, that this would not be able to trim. Oh, it actually, okay, so they've changed it. Now you can actually operate beyond the two-dimensional. Interesting. Okay, so with them, I could then select all the curves, join them. Now I'd see there are 4 curves joined into one open curve, and then I do close curve, and that will just connect the points there. And now with this curve here, this is a polyline made up of 1, 2, 3, 4, of 5 segments, right? I want to use the rebuild command that I've mentioned a few times already. And it asks me for the degree, and it asks for how many points are going to be on this new curve. So I can see that turning down that curve will make it smoother. And there we go. And in that way that you can kind of smooth out a curve by increasing the degree, say keeping the points mostly the same. And there are different things that you can do with rebuilding curves. A lot of the time, if I'm just to offset this curve, that you can see the point count on an offset curve, that's one of the main reasons to rebuild. And of course, if I rebuild the 71 points to 5 points, it will be not a properly offset curve. So you kind of need to maybe reduce it to a reasonable number that is not going to be, so I can get down to 25, and I still haven't really lost the kind of offset nature of it. And now rebuilding these points are equidistant from each other. So sometimes you're going to need to rebuild curves. A lot of time, if you go to fabrication, you don't want these curves with too many points on it. And sometimes rather than be 100, this might be 10,000, 100,000, some crazy number that then you would rebuild and try to get it slightly smoother, but also neat in its point count. Okay, so now let's try draw the kettle that I mentioned, or maybe first I'll do the chess piece. So with Citrix, it's a little complicated. I remember when I first did it in terms of just accepting all those pop-ups so that you can copy an image from a different window into your sort of Citrix window. That to allow copy or paste. So I was choosing which piece to draw. And I'm going to move. Okay. Okay, so when I copy an image from a different window and then I press paste, it's going to ask for a start point and an end point. I don't really care about the scale of this, so I'm not going to rescale it because I'm going to rescale the kettle to make sure the kettle is exactly accurate. But what I want to do here is retrace this geometry. So for the top, I'm going to make a perfect circle. And maybe I don't care about it being too accurate. For here, I'm going to make a perfect circle. And same for here. And now if I go into circle command, I just want to show you some other ways of drawing circles. So with all these other ways of drawing circles, the way I drew those circles was to have the center point and then any point on the radius, which means I'm just giving it a center point and a radius. But I also have this circle with 3 points. And what's nice about that is I could select a point there when near is on in the OSNAP, a point there, and then another point here. At that point, I'm never selecting a radius, but it's giving me a curve close to that curve. And I can do the same thing for this curve here. It's going to be, say, somewhere there. Because trying to get that accurately while sort of imagining where I think the radius is would be quite challenging. This probably isn't a perfect or based on a perfect circle. It might be kind of a little bit, but let's do the top bit where I do it just freeform. So I'm just going to do a NURBS curve. I just want a few different points on it. Okay, I'm deliberately going to go over. Okay, so now I drew this freeform curve and I did my own points, but that might not be the smoothest curve. So what I can do is I can rebuild the curve that I just did. I want to decrease the point count, not increase it. So let's decrease it to 5 and keep the degree at 3, just sort of a standard curve, right? And now it doesn't quite follow, it's sort of, but it's far smoother of a curve. I can adjust these few points now. And I'm going to do one line right down the middle. So might get a little. Okay. So now I'm going to just move the image to the side. I could just use the red arrow, but if I want it accurately to move it back into the same place, I can do M, choose a start point, have ortho on, and then just do 100 units there. So now I know if I want to bring it back to the exact same position, I would just move it back 100 units. Okay, so I'm going to use the trim command And I'm going to use the circle to trim this curve. And I'm going to use this curve to trim that curve. So now I need to undo. And I need to select both of these and trim that. And then I can select this curve and trim that. And that's the sort of fast speed of going with left click and right click. That left click to select something, right click to sort of maybe select enter, and you kind of just get used to it without really knowing exactly how to explain what you're doing, but it's sort of a very fast left click, accept, right click, go there. That's important to kind of get used to how that works. So with this, maybe I should have done a straight line at this point. Or maybe I can get the center of here, go straight up and get the intersection of those 2 points, which I would need the intersection on. And now that's perfectly at the top of that circle, and come across this way and bring that down and get the perfect intersection. Right, so I can then do trim and use this curve, but I need to extend it first because it didn't actually quite need it. So extend, select this curve, that curve, now they're perfectly intersecting, and then trim. This would be the cutter, that would be trim, and then we can select this and this, so shift select to add to your selection, right click to accept them as the cutters, and then that one go. This was a construction line, so this can go, and now I can down again trim, use this one to trim that one, and use this one to trim that. So I need, again, I'm going to need a straight line. Okay, so I need to select the center, go directly up from the center, and go across this way. And then use this curve and this curve, trim the rest of the circle. And now I just have that right by itself, and use that curve to trim that curve. This is just a construction line. This can get out of there. Now I can use this curve and this curve to trim that curve and that curve. And then this curve, trim that curve, but I don't want that center either. Actually, maybe. So let's get the center of this last circle and go down to the bottom, and then get this intersection point. With this intersection point, come across, and then I'm going to activate trim that, and so what do I want to keep? I want to keep that circle there, and then I'm going to use this curve to trim that curve, and this can move. Okay, so now I've basically got that curve. The top point and the bottom point are in the exact same position. I don't actually need this rail. And with all these curves that I've just created, I can do join. And if it's accurate, it would say 11 curves joined into one curve. Clearly, there's some sort of missing point there. Let's see what that is there. If I zoom right in, it's because something is overlapping. Okay, so I'm going to use this curve to trim this extension, and now they should meet exactly. So join, and I can see up here 2 curves joined into one open curve, right? And it's open because the sort of central axis is not created. And that idea of having 2 curves overlapping like that, that would be 2 curves. That was one of the issues on the last session with contouring, in that when you contour over a surface that is 2 surfaces rather than 1 surface, you'll get two curves, not one curve, and it's sort of need to keep an eye on whether there are very small line segments or extra points that will sort of disrupt your geometry. So now if I double click in perspective view and I take this and I do revolve, and I can choose the start of the revolve axis, the top of the revolve axis, the start angle as 0, and then drag around here and say the revolution angle is 360. And there is my bishop. And there's one other thing on the bishop is this notch here. So to make that notch, I'm going to move this back, let's say, into by 100, because that's how much I moved it before. And let's make, there's different ways I could do this, but let's do a NURBS curve flat in this plane that I'm going to do F8 to turn off ortho. And I'm going to just cut into it like that. That's probably fine. So now I can extrude this and do it both ways because it's directly in the center. So both sides on, left click there. And now I don't need this image anymore, so I can delete the image. And from this is the difference between split and Boolean split that I mentioned. So if I do split and I select the cutting object as the surface, that then when I delete the surface, and I delete that it's just basically, let me turn on underneath. So it's basically just made a hole, kind of difficult to see, but it hasn't replaced that sort of interior surface, like cutting the tennis ball versus the orange. And I want it to be more like cutting the orange, where it leaves this surface on the inside. So if I Control Z to undo, I'm going to undo again. So now I have, undo one more time. So now I have the complete bishop and this cutting surface. And I want to try to do Boolean split instead. So Boolean split, and then use this as the cutting surface. And now I can delete this curve, delete this, and delete this section here. And now I have more like cutting an orange. I have cut that sort of piece out and left a surface behind on the interior. So now I'm closer to a bishop. And I'm going to stop it here and make a new video for the next example.